Jeff, yesterday was Pistons Media Day. Sean, walk us through it.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I mean, I want to preface the fact that Media Day is always the most optimistic day of the NBA season for every single team because everyone comes in 0-0. Everyone comes in with lofted expectations. But having said that, the tone of the day was that the Pistons feel like they're in a place where it's time to compete. One of the first things Troy Weaver said at the beginning of his press conference was he likes who we have. He wants to roll with who we have. That this last couple of years was about breaking things down to the studs, building things up, and getting to a point where now that we've had a couple years to go down, there's actually time now to go back up. It's time to they're in the competing stages. And not only did they show commitment through their words throughout the press conference, but in addition, they showed it through their actions as well. Not only extending, guys like Saddiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart before the press conference even started, but even guys like Killian Hayes as well got that fourth-year option extended as well, is going to have the runway to be able to actually play some basketball this season and make some decisions and not have to worry about his job entirely. So I think, ultimately the big sense around Media Day this year was that, a lot of those younger guys like Saddiq and Killian and Isaiah Stewart are taking leadership roles on this team. Even Killian said he wants to be a vocal leader on the defensive end. So overall, I think the thing that you're just seeing from this Media Day is truly how much work this team's put in this summer, how connected they really were this summer. They cited playing with each other at least once a week, which is something I haven't seen with the Pistons in years. Overall, it just seems like this group is connected, they're hungry, and it seems like they're set to go out and play some competitive basketball this season.
Sean, I know one thing, and I was reading through a lot of the quotes yesterday, and I want to ask you, because the one that stood out to me was Dwayne Casey's quote saying that this is the best team and the youngest team that he's been a part of so far for the Pistons. And for you, what are some quotes that stood out to you, and what did you make of Dwayne Casey saying that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw from everyone. I mean, Troy Weaver and Dwayne Casey both alike were confident that this team could go out and actually compete this season. One quote that stood out to me in particular was Troy Weaver talking about what it takes to contend in this league. And he says, and one of the things he said was, before you contend, you have to compete. And he cited and said, look at what the Memphis Grizzlies have done over the last couple of years. And I know a lot of people look at what Memphis did just this last season, but before that, they had those 2 years where they got in the play-in. They had that time where they had to compete and they had to play relevant basketball in order to actually squeak into the playoffs and get that experience to become who they did. So that's a team that it seems like it's pretty clear that they're modeling their rebuild after. They feel like that they have some similarities with the talent that they have over there. So for the Pistons, it's pretty obvious that, they're in a place where it feels like, it doesn't seem like tanking's on the cards at all this year. It looks like, whatever happens this season, it looks like they're looking to play relevant basketball games, by the end of March or April. So, at the end of the day, confidence was just, a key tone throughout the entire press conference.
One thing we didn't get, because we didn't have a chance to get you on when Bogdan Bogdanovic was traded here. I want to get your thoughts on the trade initially, and number two, does that change or should that change Pistons fans' expectations for this upcoming season, of where they end and where they place in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah. So every time I get a Woj tweet across my phone, there's always that moment where I have to sit down and process things for a minute. But I had to take a few extra seconds, first of all, to make sure it was a real tweet. Because At first when I saw it, I was like, wait, what the? That's all they had to give up? To get Bogdan Bogdanovic, a guy who the Jazz reportedly wanted a first-round pick.
First-round pick,
yeah. A guy that contenders were reportedly really interested in, teams like the Phoenix Suns, the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, this is a guy that was sought after by contenders in the league. So when the Pistons made that deal, but also all they gave up was Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee. Keep in mind, they essentially started with Mason Plumlee and flipped that over time into Bojan Bogdanovic. So when you look at it from that perspective, where we started versus where we at now, I'm not sure if this puts us over the hump or radically changes our expectations. But what it does do, it makes us better. It gives us someone who can shoot the ball. It gives us someone who's a career 18 to 20 points per game, is consistent on the offensive end, he might not be the greatest defensive player, but he's reliable on that end. So overall, you're getting a guy that you know what you're getting. He's an older presence. He's a veteran that can teach guys on this team what to do. But in addition, the guy's just a bucket. And that's what you need on this team. You needed a veteran who could contribute and play effective basketball. That's who Bogdan Bogdanovic is.
And I think one thing for me, too, just looking at this upcoming season and what we're going to be doing, by the way, on From Half Court, you can check that out, covering at Woodward Pistons.
Yes, sir.
The thing I'm most excited for is the storylines. And we talked about that in a previous video, all the storylines that we're going to be able to see with players, coaches, the organization. What are some storylines you're most excited to see or maybe cover with, Woodward Sports, with what we're doing? What are some things you're going to be looking for this season from specific players? And by the end of the year, just how these players go through the season and where they end up?
For me, it's the breakout performances, Jeff. It's all the guys that are coming in, whether it's guys like Marvin Bagley who are finding themselves in a situation where they're coming off of a contract extension saying this is the best teammates that he's ever had. Being in a situation where, he's not talking about just coming in and contributing. He's talking about how he can be great, how he can push to the next level, and how he can bring his game to a different level, which is something that Marvin Bagley hasn't been talking about for years. Not since he was in Sacramento, that's for sure. And then in addition, again, you talk about guys like Killian Hayes, who not only, even though he's going to be like technically coming off the bench to start the season, what he is going to be able to do is contribute in a lot of ways. And again, the fact that he's talking about being a vocal leader on the defensive end, how he was confident this offseason in his shot, how he played a lot of pickup basketball, was in the gym, was with NBA guys on a regular basis, grinding. And also, the thing that was refreshing to me about Killian was I never got to hear his thoughts on his first 2 years. So like actually hearing him be candid, hearing him say, yeah, those first 2 years are not what I expected, but we're going to move forward. And again, the fact that the Pistons showed that confidence and gave him that extension going into the day, I just think, it shows like, hey, this is a runway. This isn't even going to be a story. Go out, do what you have to do this season. But
Sean,
go ahead.
Sean, I got to tell you, you're a sexy dude. You know that?
God.
But you're killing me here. You're killing me here. You got to do me and the audience a favor. You got to take off your shirt, and we'll finish this interview.
Okay, you got it. I'll take off the shirt.
Look, Sean, I do agree, though. This is the time of the year where most fans are optimistic. Me and Jeff talked about Cade going in to open up the show today. He is a player we're looking at really being a borderline all-star. I think that is fair expectations for him. 22-7-7 is what Jeff said. Yes or no?
Listen, I think that's a solid expectation for me. I see this team, getting above 30 wins. I think the expectation, if I had to give a prediction, is somewhere around 33, 34 wins. I think ultimately at the end of the day, the big goal for this team, whatever happens, Troy Weaver wasn't even committal to giving like what he expected as far as like a playoff seed for this team this year. I think ultimately, again, it's about how do you play competitive basketball? How are you competing at the end of the season and putting yourself in a position to actually be in the play-in? Even if the team doesn't end up in the play-in, as long as they're in games at the end of the year that are of consequence, as long as they're in a position where they're close and like and they find themselves, even if they're on the outside looking in at the end of the year, that's still valuable experience, because that's something that they can say, all right, we almost got there, we competed for it, we can learn from it, we can go in and take lessons from that in the next year. And I think that's the big thing this year, is just putting themselves in positions to compete. That's something that we truly haven't been able to say with this team in 5 years. So that's
Sounds
something
about right.
that so that's something that, and again, for the first time competing for truly something, because when we did have Blake Griffin and when we did like ride his leg to the playoffs, there was a clear floor to that. There was never going to be anything going up from there. We weren't building anything, right? So ultimately, again, this is just about competing.